need to roll through and get some of this stuff done, so we'll try and keep the meeting moving this morning. We'll begin by calling the roll, please.
Mike Bell.
Here.
Bill Britt.
Here.
Tony Cox.
Here.
Bob Garrett.
Here.
John Hopper. Kim Horner.
Here.
Keith Jackson.
Here.
Mike Lacy.
Here.
Tom Rush. Here. Dan Henry.
Here.
I think Hofer went somewhere where it's warm, he kind of likes it there, I don't know. That's
Obviously, we haven't seen that.
Yes, that's right. He likes it there better than he likes us. I don't know how that works, but, next item is the, public comment. Anybody in the audience like to, bring something before the board that's not on the agenda? Morning, Lynn. Didn't say hello this morning.
It's okay. You don't have to speak.
Well, juggling a few things, but good morning.
Morning to you too.
All right, next order of business is approval of minutes. I want to apologize. You know, last month we, our staff folks were out, and I was trying to juggle several things. One of my responsibilities was to do an audio recording of the meeting. I failed miserably. I want to thank Amy that she took good notes, and I want to apologize to Stephanie for having done that. But the minutes are in your packet. Do you have any additions or corrections? Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve. And second, Rush and Lacy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes stand as approved. All right, Amy, finance reports.
I'll apologize to Stephanie as well because she left me the official recorder. And I thought I'd hit record, apparently didn't. But I do always take notes, and so that was a good backup. So Stephanie's well treasured in that regard. But you should have received your financial packet yesterday. Just a couple of items to point out. These do not have the audit adjustments, even though those are minimal, mostly related to the OPEB. We'll have those as soon as the audit is approved. On the income statement, fairly quiet month. Just a couple of things to point out. The other contracted services, account 399, that includes the second payment for the OPEB study to USI of $2,750. And then the capital expenditures, the $4,675. That is the purchase of the computers and monitors, and as you might recall, that was in the budget for $5,000. I did in the packet send out a draft of the audit that was provided by Tanya for your all's review, so you have that for today's meeting.
All right, any questions for Amy? Tom, anything moving on the investment front? We're making a mint now on interest rates, right?
0.14. Yes. So, don't really have anything to report. We do have some entries. We had made a correcting entry to get our funds transferred that were transferring from the previous month. And the correcting entry was made incorrectly. So we are making an entry to correct that as well, so you'll see that transaction on the statement.
And that, Dan did make that transfer yesterday, and it was made correctly.
Basically, we're transferring money between the two LGIP accounts, but that correction is being made.
All right, any other questions for Tom or Amy on finances? All right, Tanya, we appreciate you coming today. It's the time of the year where we're looking at last year, this year, next year. I kind of get confused about when we are, but can you give us an update on the audit report?
Hopefully you have the audit report. Curtis Morrison, the partner of this job, he cannot be here today, and he apologizes. He was actually in the hospital earlier this week for a pulmonary embolism, so he's recovering and is okay. I will keep this short and sweet. We have issued an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion that we can give the landfill. On page 8, the income statement that a lot of people pay attention to, your tipping fees were up. A lot of people were bringing additional waste to the landfill due to COVID. They couldn't really do anything else, so they were cleaning out their property and their houses. So you'll see an increase there. There is grant income of $90,000, where you all received 2 grants, and there is a schedule of the state assistance in the back of this report. So your net income for the year was about $958,000, which is, you can tell, a little bit higher than last year. That was $819,000. The rest of the report that you can read through, nothing has changed. There's no new GASB statements that were implemented during the year, so all that is the same. If you flip back to the back of the report, you will see our report on internal controls and our findings. We had 2 findings. In the previous year, you had 3 findings. One was corrected with the purchase policy. So we found, looking at expenditures, that you all are doing a lot better job this year of signing off on purchase orders, dating the purchase orders, putting the amount for the purchase order. So that finding was corrected this year. We still have user controls on there, and this was in the report last year for voided tickets, and this was partially corrected from prior year. So what we found last year was there was about 25% of the total tickets that were being voided out of total tickets. And so we got with Dan and Terry, and he explained how this was happening, where they were, as soon as someone got off the scales, someone was hitting add, and it didn't matter if there was someone behind them or not, and then when someone pulled up, they were hitting add again. So this was causing a lot of voided tickets. So just how the system was being used. So that has been corrected to where they're not hitting add. And also, they can just void tickets. Terry has changed the system to now they have to put why the ticket is being voided. And in the office, they are printing out any tickets that they do void. So that's the part that has been corrected from our finding from prior year. The thing that we have kept on here is that no one is reviewing these voided tickets that are printed out. I will add that I went through these voided tickets, and I'll tell you that a lot of them are like the tire pickup, the Patriot Recycling, and the West Rock. That is just, they need weight so that it can be billed to the landfill. So those will always be voided tickets. There's very few tickets in there, someone that maybe brought waste that the landfill couldn't accept, or they brought $100 bill that they didn't have change for, or they, drove off. Very, not a lot of it, but I mean, our concern is that someone in the office could start, pocketing money and just hitting void ticket, and no one would ever know, because no one is looking at a report from Terry for the voided tickets, because he can print out the total voided tickets in the system, and then they are printing the voided tickets. So that's where we still have this finding for our concern. And so I've spoken with Dan about this, so he's going to start reviewing these and signing off on these voided tickets that they're printing.
So we have a report, we're just not reviewing the report.
And the report, kind of a downside to the report that I've seen, that I received from Harry, it doesn't list the weights. I don't know if that's possible from his system, and so the only way I could tell where the weights were from the voided tickets that you all were printing out. That was in the folder, but they will list the total number of voided tickets. But we are moving in the right direction. We had like 25% voided tickets. There was about 11,000 voided tickets last year. And of course, we didn't issue our report in February, so we didn't meet with them to get this corrected until late towards the end of the 6/30/2020 fiscal year. So, when I looked after 6/30/2020, there was like 85 voided tickets through October. So if you, through that extrapolated to the whole year, you're looking at about 250 voided tickets. So we just have a concern that someone could take advantage of this.
How about the drive off? Was there very many,
No,
not worth the effort to
probably not.
run them down, call
No.
the police?
There was like 2, I think.
Okay.
So not much at all, but.
And then also the customer, like one of the guys with $100 bill came back and paid at a later date and had to regenerate the ticket to replace that, and she put it with the voided ticket for that day,
So that's that finding. So I think, the office staff and speaking with Dan, that it's, probably been corrected as I'm speaking penalty right now.
I think there was
Yeah.
5 tickets.
Yep, so.
Out of a couple hundred, like I said, the majority of them were West Rock, Tire Recycling, and, what was the third one? Oh, Liberty, so, yes.
So, yeah, so like, and I'll reiterate, I'm not pointing out that there is a problem there, like we didn't see one, it's just someone can take advantage of it. If someone had, you know, rationale in the office to, oh, when no one looks at these, I could just hit void ticket and pocket this cash.
One of the things I also spoke to Terry about was putting an outbound ticket, that way it would not be counted as income, it would be an outgoing thing, and he's in the process of trying to get that set up.
I think that would take
Because
care of,
if we do a wait, we have to void the ticket, so it's not
Right.
charged.
Yeah, so that would be really good with
if
it.
we just had an outgoing ticket and then maybe had one report for it, because it wouldn't affect the accounting at all, would it, Amy?
No.
So it would just kind of be a separate little component of the system with an outgoing ticket. And that way, they're kind of making it work through the void now to give these people weight. I assume TDOT gets them if they don't have a weighted ticket. And, we could do that, just add something to the system, and it would be much cleaner probably next year.
So that's the first finding, and like I said, the management corrective action plan says that it was like partially corrected. And then the operations are still being investigated by the state comptroller's office, and I have no other information on that. They have not issued anything or contacted us, so. And then one other thing I want to point out, we did not put this as a finding, we're recommending that a policy be put in place, like you all have a policy for, you know, how many steel-toe boots you're gonna buy the guys, out of the landfill, and how many uniforms. There's just not a policy for inside the office, which the IRS can, they see that as a fringe benefit, of just buying like simple things like polos, or jackets, even though it says Hamlin County Solid Waste on it, they see that as you're providing a benefit, so you really should have a policy of how many you're going to provide for the office staff, in a year. And Amy can, assist with a policy for that, but like there was a local city in East Tennessee that the IRS came in and did an IRS audit, and they docked them for not putting like t-shirts to a fire department. That wasn't added to their W-2, so the IRS could come down very harshly on that.
Even if they use these on site and don't wear them when they're off?
The IRS's viewpoint is, would somebody wear this on a Saturday? So like, so even if you bought, like, so the IRS's standpoint on this other, city in East Tennessee was, I mean, they just bought their fire department t-shirts and they got taxed for it, because they said that should have been added to their W-2 and as a fringe benefit.
So it's a friend
They're hard to
benefit.
find something like that.
So, but just, you know, warning to, you know, be careful of, you know, how much is bought, and so, and you should have a policy for that for the office staff. Most places have a policy for guys who are like, you know, out working in the, you know, whatever the utility does, just not their office staff.
So if you put a policy in place, that covers you, is what you're saying.
Yeah, at least you can say we're following our policy, it's minimal, it's, you know, de minimis, so. But that's what I have, unless somebody has any questions for me.
We're gonna have a lot of time to review the report, but, I think we've hit the high points. Any questions, comments, concerns for Tanya?
So net position, what was the impact on net position?
Like I said, your tipping fees were up, I mean, you all didn't raise your, rates or anything, it was just more waste and tonnage that was brought to the landfill that I think had a lot to do with people couldn't really go out and do anything, so they were doing home projects, cleaning up property, et cetera. Another thing that's a big swing, was you'll see fringe benefits were down, which that has to do with the TCRS, and that's based on the actuary report. Last year you all had negative, what they call negative pension expense, but that all has to do with the actuary report. You all have still paid the same amount of money, you still budget the same amount of money. That is simply in accordance with GASB 68 with that actuary report, and this year you had positive pension expense for that when they calculated the liabilities and the deferred inflows and the deferred outflows. And then you had the interest, or the grant income, the 2 grants that I pointed out. So that's basically what changed your net position for the year.
Was a lot of that like residential garbage, is that what majority of it was residential?
So the net position change was,
Your net position this year, you had an increase of $957,759. Last year, your increase was $819,037.
Our net position has increased from $863,000 in 2018 to $2,639,000 at the end of 2023.
What was the first comparison?
At 2018,
2018.
We can look at the.
There's a table in the back somewhere.
I was looking at 12.
So yeah, it was about 863,000, now it's, 2,639,000. Yes. So you're definitely going in the right direction.
So that's shown on what page?
Yeah, the MD&A, the management discussion analysis, gives a good overview comparing the last 3 years, that if you all want to read like what the changes for the landfill is, and it'll comment from, and really another big change from 18 going into 19 was you all increased your,
Tipping fee.
your rates to $38. So,
Anything else? Dan, Amy, you have thoughts or comments about the report?
I did as usual, I reviewed it in depth and, made a few changes, mostly cosmetic, but
You put it in her columns, make sure she could add.
I did do that.
See, that's.
I've got more
you can't trust us with adding.
that's
But I don't have any comments.
the post-closure liability.
All right. Well, if you'll take some time, look over it, there's a lot of good information there, but I think in general, you can see we're heading in the right direction. We've got a couple of internal control things we need to tighten up. I think that's always going to be the case, but as long as we improve every year, we'll be doing better. So, anything else for Tanya?
Yeah, we have a follow-up segment.
In order to submit it to the state comptroller's office, she needs approval by the board.
So, in order to submit the report, we need a motion and.
Can I make the motion?
We got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Lacy and Rush. Please call the roll.
Mike Bell,
Yeah.
Bob Garrett,
Yes.
John Hopper, Tim Warner,
Yes.
Keith Jackson,
Yes.
Matt Lacy.
Yes, sir.
Tom Rush.
Yes.
Let's make sure Mr. Mumpower gets a copy of our report, and we'll, get in the good graces with the comptroller. Thank you, Tanya, and if we've got other questions, we may follow up, but, I appreciate your effort. Okay, Dan, what's your report today?
On PDEC inspections, we had an inspection yesterday, it came late last night, and thought I would go ahead and fill it in because she actually put us on the clock for one of them with a kind of a response or a plan for 30 days. So I'll go back to last month's, we had some litter, some flagging. We were utilizing the material that was being stripped for enclosure. Of course, had a lot of flagging in it, which is trash and dirt mix. It's still considered temporary cover, and that had a little excessive for her opinion. We've since corrected that. Also in January was the fence on the closed landfill. They carried over into yesterday's inspection, and basically, Steve and I talked about this Tuesday. There was some sort of flare system, vacuum system put on. We talked about possibly utilizing the system that was put in for collection 2009-ish, and that's one of the options we're talking about. And the other is possibly utilizing some of the flange fittings across from the dwelling down on the southwest
she actually sent a detail in. I got that AOC last night about 6:30, so I just glanced at it this morning, but, what they're talking about doing is putting an active system in where you've got a fan pulling the gas, and then what they've done in West Tennessee is put run that from a solar unit, and then put a flare on it to burn off any excess gas, which Dan and I talked, we think we can just do the solar unit and the fan and use what's there to pull the gas from.
Can you pressurize that system, see if it's still intact?
I'm concerned that some of it's not, but yeah, we can, when we can pressurize it with just a little air pump and then see what's popping up somewhere.
What we're talking about is when we were about to sell electricity and they put the system in and then
Right.
walked away, so.
So there should be infrastructure in the ground, we just never.
We just hope it's
Not
still,
collapsed
or, you know, where the landfill settles and moves, we're just hoping it's not broken or collapsed. And we can, if you got an air compressor of some kind, I
We've
think,
got one on.
yeah, so we can put air to it and see how it reacts. And
It'd
hopefully.
be nice to be able to use something that's already there versus installing something.
I think we can we can use part of it, obviously, and then if we need to patch a little bit here and there, we can do that. But I can we'll get Conrad or somebody out there with you guys helping us to try and find out.
And they also want to install some more monitoring wells that are.
I've got that in.
Okay, you'll get that in. So.
All right, so we got doubled up on the TDEC reports. Anything else, Dan?
Not in this section.
Yeah, we got a lot more to go. I did notice you put the Perky Carter invoice in the package. Is that just for information, or is there something we need to?
Anytime it's over the contract price, I have to put it in the packet. That's why Steve's invoice is also in there as well.
Okay. So you don't have any concern with the?
That's just let the board know where we're at if they have any concerns.
Okay. All right, Mr. Bostic.
Okay. Again, we did the monthly gas monitoring that TDEC mandated sometime back. Prepared to report for them. The private residences out there are still asking us not to come into their houses, and we're not gonna push that because they're obviously concerned with COVID. Item 2 there, in the last couple of meetings, I had mentioned the assessment of corrective measures that TDEC is asking for, and that's based on 2 items. One being some hits on the groundwater monitoring. There's a couple levels that are just, slightly over their maximum contaminant levels. We submitted that report, which is, it's probably a couple of 100 pages of information and tables and graphs and stuff that they asked for. Submitted to them. We got some comments back from them, had a conference call with them, and submitted the final report to them. The work on that investigative report to date, we can absorb under our existing budget. But going forward, we're gonna need a budget amendment to perform what they're mandating us to do. And there's 3 things that they're requiring. One being doing a well survey and a report within a mile of the landfill. We've got either no or 1 well within a mile of the landfill. There was one a couple of years back that was still active but was not being used, and we think that one has been abandoned, but we've got to go. Basically, what we do is we'll go to WIT Utility and see what houses they're serving within a mile radius. And then go back, you have to go back to the historical data, which when the landfill first opened, there were, I think, 8 or 10 wells that were active. But at this point, there's, the best we can tell, there are none active, but we've got to go to each one of those and talk to the homeowners and get input from them. Then we have to do a virtual public meeting just to talk about the findings and the next steps, which is, what TDEC is requiring us to do. And then the big thing is we've got to do some additional groundwater testing, but it's based on flow rates instead of our, we're doing semi-annual analysis. And then we have to put in, I think, 10 more gas probes around that is that the southwest? Around that southwest side. We have to monitor those for, I think, weekly for about 4 weeks. And the biggest part of that work will be pass-through stuff where we'll use the geotech to complete that, and then provide a backup report to go through these analyses and the monitoring results. And that reporting is included in those above costs. But that's something that TDEC is mandating. We don't really have a choice there, but we need to get this done so they don't come back to us with even more stuff if we don't follow through with their requirements. And those have to be done within the next 60 to 90 days.
Is there any room for discussion with TDEC about whether or not the plan is reasonable, or is it something we just need to get done?
We have already gotten them to relieve a number of other stuff that they had asked for, and we've had those discussions, and this is about the minimum they'll let us do on this first phase, and based on discussions with Geos, who we're using to help us through this, and they think that once we get this done, we should be free and clear. This was something that was done, I don't know if it was the late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in that neighborhood. They required this to be done in the past, and y'all went through this process and then were cleared of any other issues until they started seeing this these gas levels climb as in those probes on the landfill side, but not, what their concern is, it's moving off site, but we're not seeing any evidence of that. But what they're seeing is occasionally we'll get a high concentration on one of these probes on the site, and they just jump on that and say, okay, well, now you need to prove again that it's not moving. Plus this system that they're asking us to put in, where we hope we can reestablish what's there, should aid in not having to ever do this again.
So if we had that lid going, then we probably wouldn't be doing this.
I don't know. That's a good question. And that's something that we'll find out for sure this time if that's gonna take care of. Because the way that existing landfill, and we've talked about this before, was built, it was a bale. It was bales that were put in there, and those react differently than just putting waste in there and compacting it, because you don't have the windows built into those bales for stuff to move down that when you do your solid waste, you're not putting clay over it and, you know, building layers of stuff that where you can't get anything out of it. And that bale fill system we've seen these issues or read about them in other landfills around. That's why there's hardly any bale fills left.
Steve, what'd you say we turn around time to get this done?
We've got 60 to 90 days is what they're, actually, they asked for a lot quicker, but, you know, we've got to give them 60 to 90 days.
So what we need to do, we need to go ahead and get authorization today. to get
We've
you
got
going.
to move on it, yeah.
So Amy, Dan, what do we need to do? Is this a change order, a budget amendment? What's the proper action?
I think it's better than
So we're asking for a budget amendment of engineering services in the amount of $40,000.
Yeah, and
One more question, Steve. Does this fall into active or post-closure? Right?
where we're working at is post-closure. We're on the old landfill still.
So this would be considered a capital project as opposed to an operating expense.
Yes.
We have 4 different categories of the budget. Will this add a 5th one, or will it fall under one of the existing 4?
I think that's a question for Steve. The 4 categories we have were the meetings, miscellaneous design and consulting, sampling and reporting, and then the closure and the expansion. Would it fall in, I assume it would not be either of these.
No.
Would it fall under either of those?
It could fall under the miscellaneous design and consulting, but it would be a post-closure and not an operational. Because most of that is just stuff that comes up like this, what Paul was requiring up on, you know, the system on the landfill, the gas removal. But this would be strictly a post-closure. And I would assume that at some point you're gonna have to add a post-closure category because, you know, we're closing part of the other side, and at some point within the next few years, you're gonna be, you know, even what Dan's doing up there, repairing pops and reseeding and stuff like that, that's actually post-closure activities.
So we do need to add a 5th.
I think you need to add a 5th and to keep it
Broke down.
following with what the state requires.
Okay. So this will be a post-closure category?
Yeah, it's a post-closure.
But the question was whether it was capital or operating. If it's capital, then it's gonna get depreciated over some life. Is that the case, or it's a post-closure?
None of this stuff that we're doing for this ACM is permanent.
So I think it's an operating cost.
Okay. So what's the appropriate way we need to get a motion on the floor to consider a budget amendment. What's the appropriate categories to put the expense in?
As a post-closure expense as part of operations.
And the offset of that would be?
Well, we're either using more of our,
Would that come out of our post-closure fund?
well, I mean, we can use those funds, but it's gonna hit equity. That's the offset.
Okay.
Or any net gain in net position that we have for the year. But
Alright.
I guess with that motion, you need to decide where the funds, are you gonna pay those funds out of operating cash or the capital account?
If the operating money is sufficient, and we can preserve our post-closure money, that would be my preference.
Is that a motion?
I'll put that in form of a motion.
Got a motion for a budget amendment for $40,000 to be
You got a
paid for
second?
operating cash. Did you get a second? All right, motion and second. Since we're adjusting the budget, let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mike Bell,
Yes.
Bob Garrett,
Yes.
John Holford, Tim Warner,
Yes.
Steve Jackson,
Yes.
Matt Lacy,
Yes.
Tom Rush.
Yes.
All right, Steve, you're down to number 3.
Okay, we're performing, after Dan and I have discussed this off and on, we're doing a little additional leachate sampling to compare the results that we're getting from MUS with results, because they're still sampling at 2 different places. We're sampling where we put the sampling manhole in, they're out on their main line. And as part of that, we've been reviewing those results, and the issue that they've been concerned about are obviously phenols. And those levels, and I'm still not 100% sure why, whether it's the cooler temperatures, or I'm thinking it's the, as we talked before, as that waste decomposes, you'll get levels of some constituent will pop up and then it'll go down. And we were now below their limit on phenols on at least the last 2 samples. So either those limits are gonna stay down, or I'm not sure when it gets hotter, if they'll pop back up. So I've got a meeting scheduled with their pre-treatment guy and their wastewater plant operator, and we're gonna sit down and talk about this before we have to go into some plan to do treatment, and which we don't wanna do.
And you said that they were testing it all down the line, not where we're at. So you're saying that it could be coming from a different source that's there is a possibility.
Yeah, there's not a lot of other sources, obviously, between, other than,
Next door.
Yeah. They're testing upstream of where, GFL, Tidy Waste, whoever they are this year. They're testing upstream of that, but we do have, those old farms and stuff that we could be getting, and that's one of the big items of my questions for them is gonna be why. Because we put the equipment in that they asked for to sample on site. And it may very well be that they just hadn't communicated to their lab that that's where they're supposed to be sampling. So I've sent an email to Barry Coffey at the wastewater plant, and he's gonna set a meeting up with us and his pre-treatment coordinator. And they're driven by EPA, so we gotta figure out how we can make this happen, because I don't see any justification for putting in a $200,000 or $300,000 treatment unit there for something that's now gone away. Now we don't know if it'll come back. We hope it won't. But that phenol, as your waste decomposes, you're going to get it. It's going to climb and peak, and then it's going to drop off. Like there's a lot of constituents that do that in landfills. So hopefully we can make that work out. The next item down there is the phase 2 closure, and we discussed that at the last meeting. Dan and I and Keith, we were meeting on another subject out there, and we met with East Tennessee Turf. They came back with a letter yesterday with some comments, and I think, Nick's here. He's more than welcome to speak on these.
Yeah, Steve, why don't we do that? But everybody's got a copy of the letter that I sent based on last month's action. Nick's here. Nick's got a response. Can you just share with the board kind of where you think we stand and kind of your concern?
I sent the response back. We have covered the area that we closed with the 6 inches of soil, and we rolled it in. It took about 3 days after we were told that we were going to shut the project down for the winter time. We will monitor the stormwater and any erosion control issues that come up. I checked it after the last rain event. I think everything looks pretty good. Have you heard anything, Dan? Have you seen anything as far as erosion? But the other thing I do not agree with is having to pay for the $750 for engineering inspection fees. I understand we got started late on the project. There's been several delays we've had to battle through. Weather's one of them. We've continued to wait on getting the liner in. We got the last load of liner on Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. And, with manpower and COVID and everything, it's just been an uphill battle from the beginning. So, I would like to begin starting back on the project the 1st of April. We will probably need 90 to 120 days to finish what's remaining, because with the weather, hopefully it cooperates. We have all the liner on site. There's 5 acres that's ready for the liner currently. The rest of the area, we have some of it, we have a little bit of it stripped ready to start putting the cut fill dirt on, and just continue on around the corner from where we stopped for this winter. Also, I'd like to ask that we would start having bi-weekly progress meetings. That way we can, everyone stay engaged and on task with getting it done on time. Because we're gonna need, some extra time to be able to get it done, and get it finished up and closed.
So your major point of contention is the engineering inspection fees?
Yes.
Is that- Okay.
Yes.
Dan, Steve, your thoughts about the response letter and kind of where we stand? Do you have a game plan?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I dug through the general conditions, and there is justifications for delays because, and the wording in there is not pandemic, it's epidemic. And this is my first one, so I'm not real sure exactly how you quantify that, but, our inspector has been on the site 91 days, and if you look at the 150 calendar days, that's 5 months, you say 20 days a month, so that's roughly about 100 days. So he's used 90% of the days, basically, as far as his inspection goes. And, if you look at the time that was provided at the last meeting, you guys agreed on 70 days. That would have put the final completion next Friday. Of course, we cut the contract off, or not cut it off, but delayed it because of the weather and I'll agree, he's been fighting with it. But we did use the TDOT calculation to provide additional days. As far as reduction of workforce, I'm not gonna argue with him there, but I don't know what that has done, how that's impacted him. The liner, submittal process, manufacturing, everything. We got our first submittal on the liner materials, I think, August 12th. So maybe there may have been some delay there with this supplier as far as, and again, everything is being attributed to COVID. I don't know if their plant was shut down. I don't think so, because they were supplying liners to other jobs. I guess the long and the short of it, there's two things. One, you're being asked to pay almost double the contract without any penalty to the contractor. And two, Nick has made a good point that he would provide a detailed schedule on how he was gonna make this happen in the last 120 days or whatever he's asking for. I don't know that we can really make an agreement or anything like that before we see the schedule on how they're gonna make this happen. If we're only gonna have 3 or 4 guys on the job when they come back in, it's not gonna happen. So, and 3 or 4 guys and what equipment we've had, we've tried to help by, number one, Dan's let them use the bar area that is close there instead of having to go all the way, it's, I don't know, cuts the travel time in half or whatever.
The borough area was an option with the contract to use on site. They wore the other borough pit up at the radio flyers area. We had the option in the contract for either one, whichever we chose.
Another thing we've done is we've got T-Deck to relieve the extent of compaction that is required there, which is gonna help. I think you'll agree going 10 to the -6 instead of 10 to the -7 is because of what you're putting dirt on. It's
right.
to keep it from pumping. So at this point, I'd recommend we get a detailed plan on your plan that you're talking about putting together on how we're gonna make this happen. We're in a position now where we're not, nothing's gonna happen till 1st of April. Hopefully it'll dry up enough and maybe pull all that stuff together and then and talk about it next month instead of making decisions based on information we don't really have. And Nick, I'd like to have some more information on your reduction in workforce and how the governor's state of emergency impacted you. And that can be, we've put out 50 jobs, trying to hire people. We can't hire them. We need, in my opinion, we need some more justification for them.
That's fine.
And we're still at a point where we've got a contract that says it'll be done within this many days. We've already extended it. The board agreed on 70 days, which basically brings us to where we are now. And there's gonna have to be a decision on whether we have liquidated damages or not. But I think we need, if East Tennessee Turf is saying we don't think we should be hit with liquidated damages, I think we need some more justification and backup before we can agree to that. I don't know if all that makes a lot of sense to you, but I don't think we've got enough information at this point to decide whether or not that should happen.
Dan, you're out there every day watching the project. You think that's the way to go? You got any other input?
I think we need to defer the decision until we get a little more information to decide how we're gonna, a four-man crew is not enough to run that job, that's obvious.
No, because we're at 25%, maybe 30% complete as far as ready to put the liner materials down. And unless Nick wants to pay extra, those liner contractors, they wanna come in, get it all done and leave. And it'll be like rats running all over the landfill when they come in there because they don't take any prisoners.
That's not a pretty picture, I just want to say.
We get X amount of mobilization from it.
All right.
If you go to the landfill in Smith County, there's probably, I'd guess, 10,000 buzzards there, so.
Yeah, so they
You may not have as big a problem as you think, but
Steve, I got a question. How many working days are left on the project?
none.
How many working days are left to get the project complete?
Well, Nick is asking for basically 120 days, additional days.
That-
2 substantial and then another 30 to 5.
But you're talking about,
A lot of days that we won't run out, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, they ran out in substantial in November, final in December, and then you added 70 days.
and that comes off of the 120 that,
It's gotta be a lot
That's
of
what's
money.
been added to this point, and the request is for another 120.
All right, it looks like we've got additional legwork to do. Nick, you okay getting with Dan and Steve, coming back to the board next month with a game plan? With something, we can kind of iron out the details.
Nick, as soon as you can get something together, let's meet instead of like
Yes,
2 or 3 days before.
Anything else from the board that you want this group to come back with, that you want to make sure is addressed before it comes back to us for consideration? Any other concerns you all got? All right, guys, if we can do that, I appreciate it. Put it back on the agenda for next month. We'll try and work out a game plan. We'll figure out where the bumps in the road are and we'll see if we can smooth it out next month. All right, Dan, we've got a few minutes. West Rock, I don't know, I've done a little legwork on this. Your concern is we got an invoice that has some questionable values. Is that where you stand on West Rock?
As far as it's always been, I've only been responsible for the haul bill. Anything that was generated as far as recyclables that were profit were sent back to the city and county.
That was supposed to be the situation. It has not been that case. I've met with West Rock, trying to get things sorted out. There's a three-headed monster between the county, the city, and the solid waste board. The board should only be paying haul fees. Amy, I know you've been involved in that, and I think there is an adjustment to be made from the last invoice that's in our favor with regard to haul fees. But that's still getting sorted out. We are working with them. I believe also that with the change in ownership at West Rock, that the solid waste board was not set up as a vendor in their accounting system, which is part of the problem. Is that getting addressed? Has that been?
It's waiting to be filled out. I want to wait till after the meeting.
Okay. But it is true that the solid waste board should only pay hauling fees. They've gotten confused and commingled things, and we're still trying to get them sorted out. I think by next month, we'll have that resolved. I don't know, Amy, you've been closer to some of the numbers. You agree?
I do, and that's all that has been paid by the landfill is the haul fees.
Okay. So we'll continue to work on that, and again, we'll report next month, but I think we're closer than we were last month. All right, Dan, you got several other things in about 5 minutes. Pick and choose and just run through what you got.
I'm gonna skip LDA right this moment. Scale policy has been updated, the address, hours, tonnage price, et cetera. Really nothing major, just presented to the board. Do you all need to vote on that, or just updated?
I looked at it and couldn't tell what the changes were. Can you tell me
Tonnage
what-
went up, the address changed, we've got the mail being delivered, we've just started forwarding the mail from the PO box. We wanted to wait till we got to the end of tax season before we actually changed the address over, get everything going.
So it's just the address?
It's just updated, I think the old tonnage price was only $35 a ton, we changed it, and the hours, it's.
I think all those things are already been reviewed and approved by the board as far as I'm concerned. The mailing address and the fees have already been set. So I think you're just updating your records.
Yeah, COVID policy, we had been piggybacking what the county, we got from the county. And we were informed that we needed to bring it in front of the board for approval. So we've had a couple employees that have utilized the recommendations and then found out they had to use their vacation time until we get this board.
So you're using vacation instead of sick?
Yes,
Why are they using vacation instead of sick?
because if they don't use any of their sick time, they get a week's pay.
So they choose to use their vacation time
Correct.
instead of sick, okay. But, all right, I looked real quickly at this. What policy are you asking the board to adopt?
Just to follow these guidelines, this is what we'd received from the county, and that's what we were following. And then you informed us that it had
All right.
not been approved.
So I don't know what we're asked to vote on, or what are the guidelines?
How you're going to get paid, if you're going to get paid, has been ordered by the government to quarantine or isolate because of COVID-19, has been advised by healthcare providers to self-quarantine because of COVID-19, has symptoms of COVID-19, and is seeking medical diagnosis. Those are the three biggies. And then the others go down through there. If you have children or whatever, it's a fraction of what you would get if you take off. Like this is from the courthouse.
Okay.
That's what you all do, Bill.
We have a limit on the number of hours.
Is that the same policy that you got, Dan?
This came from there, and that's what.
So we need a motion to just piggyback the county's policy, is that what we need?
And
Differ from that, Tom.
Yes, mine's significantly different than that. We went through and declared them essential employees, which threw this act out, and we adopted a separate policy for that reason. So, and the fact that we got 300 employees instead put us in a different category, so. But yes, basically, if in our situation, you would be required to take leave unless you can telecommute or do some other administrative work.
Well, the county has also included some essential employees back. We've got a letter back in the spring. So that's why we.
And this will be based on the flyer in here, will sunset as December 31st, 2020? Or does it keep on going? That's what this.
We extended it through April.
Okay. It would help me a great deal. We got a form, but I don't see what the policy is. It would help me to understand it if we had a copy of the policy that indicates what we're approving. I don't think there's any question we're trying to penalize people, but do we know how many people we're impacting?
Just three.
Three people. And right now, they've been paid.
They've had their time taken back away from them on vacation. Yeah, they were paid and then they had to be turned around and it was docked against their PTO time.
Okay, so what we're really talking about is making an adjustment to somebody's leave balance that's on the books.
And in future too.
All right. I don't, what the board, I'm confused, but if y'all wanna,
Does it have to be passed at this meeting, or can we get a policy back next month and pass it? Is it urgent?
Not necessarily.
No, it's not, we're not at the end of the fiscal year. Can we table this till the next time?
that'd be my desire.
Let's do that. We're running low on time, we got people looking at windows.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
getting nervous.
Hey, they got meetings still, yeah, be careful. All right, Dan, if you can do that, I think that helps get on the agenda next time. Finance charges,
We have two customers that have requested their finance charges be dismissed. One is 33 cents.
Can I pay that and move on?
She says she has to get approval, but basically, she even tried to pay with a credit card and we couldn't take it over the phone. It's just 33 cents.
33 cents on a credit card.
The other is Casella, which is 5821. They were basically fell over the Christmas holidays. They said they didn't get their bills in time.
How much is it?
5821.
That's more than 33 cents. I can do that math quick.
They are an on-time payment, I mean, they pay regularly on time, it's never.
So there's a chance it could've got lost in the mail, because
Correct.
I've seen stuff get lost in the mail.
Correct. And they've included letters in.
And they use us a lot, and good customers, it's never happened before, and it's,
Correct.
I say we waive theirs. I like good customers.
You like good customers,
I
it's a
do.
motion.
It's a motion.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There you go.
I like to work.
33
Math,
cents?
yeah.
At 30 cents, 33 cents, I'll take care of that, Mr. Jackson.
All right, folks, I appreciate it. We are running up on the next meeting. We'll call it adjourned. See you next month.